Is The Brutalist really that good? I mean, this movie exploded out of the Venice Film Festival with Brady Corbet, this director who he's been around for a very long time, started out as an actor long time ago, directed a movie here or there. And suddenly he wins Best Director at the Venice Film Festival, beating out some really major, iconic directors. I mean, it's incredible. The reviews are glowing. A24 picked this movie up for just $10 million because everybody's saying it's an Oscar frontrunner. And I have to say, I think that A24 made an excellent purchase. This is a phenomenal film. And we're going to talk about the fact that it looks like such an expensive movie and they made it for so little money. I mean, mwah! I just want to say up front, a lot of times recently, Oppenheimer obviously was very structural, but that was like a blockbuster. So a lot of times these days, smaller films tend to be more ephemeral. But this year, to have Conclave, The Brutalist, and I would also say A Complete Unknown, which are, very structured, old school type of filmmaking, but in the mid to low range of budgets, and be so good, and to be able to, I feel, compete with the bigger movies is very exciting. I mean, you always wonder, like in 20 to 30 years, what will Turner Classic Movies play, right? Just Marvel and DC movies? No, they're going to play these movies. And they are going to be just as enchanting as they are now. It's very nice to see. It makes me feel very good about the place that cinema is in right now and its future. It was very exciting. Ho ho! All right, so the film is pretty much guaranteed to have multiple Oscar nominations across the board. And I think it'll win probably at least one Oscar. I think that Corbett is probably the one who's going to take it home. I think original screenplay is a very, very strong category for him. But I also think he has a genuine shot at Best Director. I really do. When you see this movie, you'll be so impressed with the directing. It's just really great. That's another reason that it's so confounding. You're like, well, where has this guy been? I mean, we know where he's been, but to see him just jump to this level is like exciting. I think he has a similar style, in fact, to Christopher Nolan. If anything's going to hurt him a little bit, is that it is a little Oppenheimer-y a little bit, right? But he's not like Sam Mendes, where he's just totally, single white femaling Christopher Nolan. He's a little Frank Darabont. This movie reminds me a little bit of The Shawshank Redemption. A little Kubrick, all of Kubrick's work, very Kubrick infused. Well, that's pretty exciting. And you know what? It also reminds me very much of Orson Welles' work, a lot of Orson Welles' work, but particularly Citizen Kane, because it has this epic quality to it. It's just very impressive. But perhaps most of all, the film visually echoes the style of architecture that is also the title and depicted in the film itself, brutalism. Isn't that interesting? So interesting. Brutalist architecture actually did come about right after World War II. Starkly minimalist, modernist, and also futurist. And it's believed to be a reaction to the war, an intentional movement away from the nostalgia and romanticism of pre-war architecture. Although I think that Corbett is arguing that it's also an emotional reaction, which I think is really amazing. Now, I'm not a student of architecture. I'm a student of the cinema, but now they're overlapping in an exciting way. So I did look into brutalism because I'm trying, this film is so exciting and it's so vast. And so I'm still thinking about it. And I'd be curious, once you see it, what your theories are about it. No, be careful to mark spoiler comments, please. But I really feel that, as I said, that Corbett is saying this is, brutalism is an emotional depiction. It's depicting how people felt after the war. And I think he personifies that with a fictional architect, Laszlo Toth. I looked it up. Laszlo Toth isn't a real guy, although it makes it seem like he is. But, Laszlo Toth, is this architect coming out of World War II. And as I watched The Brutalist, again, as I said, I was like, what's this about? And I wasn't sure. And after the film was over, though, I thought about it. And this is what I came up with. I think it's about a couple of different things, but the big one is that I think it's about how depression sinks into every core of our being without our even really knowing it. And that to me is an incredible message. The depression sneaks up on you, right? You might have even convinced yourself that you've gotten over things. But if you step back and you look at your behavior, you'll realize that maybe you're not over it, that you are traumatized, and that trauma is not always so overt, and it sometimes can present itself in hidden ways. That to me is really interesting. It's a very adult film, by the way, both contextually and also in some of the subject matter, so be aware of that. But with an artist like Laszlo Toth, I like architecture as art, highlighting that it is art, because, I think it would be more traditional if he had like these dark paintings. But instead he has these dark buildings. It was just amazing. Like his depression, it seeps into his work and it just pours out of him overall, like in his behavior. But he's commissioned to do this huge building. And so his depression is, blown up to that scale. And just to see this visual marker of it, I mean, it's just incredible. And all the time, Laszlo, I think himself, does not realize what's really happening to him, like so many of us do. I think that's what makes the film very relatable, particularly to adults. I think obviously everybody's at a different level, but I think we do sometimes kid ourselves and push past things and say, oh, we're okay, we're fine, it doesn't bother us. And I think, though, that with this movie, you realize that maybe it is, presenting itself in ways like, your sleep patterns, how you behave towards other people. Maybe it is in your work. And I just think that's very powerful. And it really spoke to me personally. The Brutalist was largely filmed in Hungary. I thought that was amazing. Standing in, I would say, very, very effectively for Pennsylvania. I have family in Pennsylvania. I thought it was taking place. It seemed a little austere, but I thought it was Pennsylvania. And you know what? This is the kind of film that makes you feel there should be an Oscar for location scouting. Again, this film was made for $6 to $8 million, and it looks as stunning and as epic as it does. Is just really not only, Corbet's doing and the whole team, but particularly the location scout. I'm like, where did you film this? And they're like, Hungary. And you're like, how'd you do this? This is incredible. So aside from addressing the effects of depression and trauma, the film also has another powerful message that I really thought was good. So and it ties into that. So one of the best lines in the film is that it's not about the journey, that the destination is what's more important. So often people say, don't worry about the destination. It's really the journey. And this film is like, no, that is just a way to make you, to dissuade you or to take you off course, to take your eye off the goal. Because also sometimes the journey can be really bad, but the destination is what makes it worthwhile. Again, not to lose yourself. I think that's a way out, to be like, hey man, I'm just enjoying the journey. And then therefore you never get there. And so this, so again, I'm still thinking about it. But I think a good way to put it is that it's the importance of a milestone, and that not just, the idea of reaching your goals, because that makes it seem like not like, it doesn't make it seem as altruistic, I guess is the right term to look for. But you know what I think it's really about? I think it's really about persevering. And that's why the destination is important, so that you don't fade away or stop or succumb to the horrors of the journey or the pressures of the journey or the distractions of life, that you persevere and that don't let anyone keep you from reaching your goal. And so that was really amazing to me. Because at first when they said it, I was like, oh, you're not supposed to say that. That might make some people feel bad, that's how, but then this film was like, no, we're saying it. It's the journey. It's not the journey, it's the destination. And I was like, why would they say that? Why would they fly in the face of what we've all decided to say? So I've been thinking about it, and I think it's really interesting. Obviously you should, I wouldn't totally write off the journey, but I think, it's important to, do a little bit of to point that out. Again, it's still a weird thing to talk about. So yes, The Brutalist gives you a lot to think about because it's a really long movie. It's 3.5 hours. I can't believe it. But it has a built-in 15-minute intermission. Oh, that was so fun. And like a lot of classic films, they don't just stop the movie. It's scored, there's a music piece, and they have an image up on the screen during intermission. That was really lovely. During Killers of the Flower Moon, everybody got, Scorsese got upset, and film fans got upset. How dare you interrupt the movie for an intermission? But I think it's a great idea, and I think it's wonderful that this film includes it. I think it not only obviously gives you a break to run to the bathroom and get some more snacks, But I think it also gives you time to think about what you've just seen. I mean, I went to see the film at a press screening with, I got to bring a guest, and we used that time to be like, what do you think of this movie so far? What do you think they're trying to say? This is crazy, man. And also to talk, think about it yourself, talk to those with you, talk to those around you. And there was kind of the murmuring. I think 2 people left, by the way. Their loss. But, there's kind of the murmuring of other people talking about it and checking in with each other. It was just really kind of cool. I liked it. I think, I was like, yes, more built-in intermissions. This is a great idea. And the score, speaking of the score, so good. This is from the UK's Daniel Blumberg, who has worked with Corbett before. And I'm definitely getting the score for this movie. This was a great score. Plus, in addition to the score, there is a song used at the end of the movie, which is such a wild choice that comes out of nowhere. You're like, why this choice? It's such an intentional choice that I love that it forces you, just like great art, to be like, that's so bizarre. But it was definitely a choice. Why did you make that choice? Let me think about it. That's really cool. The song was great. You were like, this is actually the perfect song to end the movie with. And in fact, it's only available here on YouTube. So I don't want to give away what the song is, because when it starts, I want you to be as shocked as I was. But when afterwards, if you're like, I want to hear that again, I'm sure, hopefully there'll be a soundtrack for the film, because I want to pick up that score. I don't know if it'll include the song. It obviously has rights issues because it's only on YouTube. But just go look it up on YouTube and you'll be able to see it, to listen to it again. Actually, it's a music video, so you can hear and see it. The film's visuals are also exceptional. Oh my gosh, they're so good. Including, by the way, the credits. Opening and end credits are highly stylized. And you were like, damn, why has no one else done this? I mean, I'm sure a couple of people have done it here and there, but why don't more directors highly stylize their credits? I think that I think it's done in the style of architectural credits, but I loved it. When the movie started, the opening credits, it's just this long take, and then they have the credits come in stylized, and you're like, man, this is so great. This is such an artiste style movie. You're like, let me get my beret on and intellectualize the crap out of this. I mean, it's so fun. You're like, all right, I will play intellectual film person. I love it. I just think it's so great. I wonder if Film Twitter will support this film. You would think that they would, but I mean, I guess maybe a lot of them haven't seen it yet, but I haven't seen a lot of chatter from that corner of the internets. Corbett makes just so many fantastic choices here. And again, it's so amazing to see this guy come out of nowhere. And a lot of actors who become directors direct themselves. They're like, I shall give myself the role I always deserved. But not Corbett. He just fully steps behind the camera and I think is better for it. And just incredible work. As an actor, you might have recognized him from the photo I put up earlier. That's from 2007's Funny Games. I think that's his biggest, most well-known role. And he's directed a couple of things. Vox Lux, I think maybe is the most recognized with Natalie Portman, but nobody really recognized Corbett there. So again, as I said, to rocket to the top like this, where you're like, he could win Best Director and it would be deserved. I mean, it's amazing. I hope he's able to maintain it. I hope he picks his next feature very carefully, because people are going to be looking for it. I'm going to be looking for it. I really definitely want to see what he does next. But while Corbett, I want to point out, is getting all the attention for this film, it's important to point out that his partner, both professionally and personally, Mona Fastvold, who's also an actress and filmmaker, co-wrote the film. So she deserves a lot of credit as well. Because again, it's not only very well directed, but it's very well written. It is a very well written film. And as I said, it's so great to see these more structured films, mid-range to small films coming back. It's very exciting. Although I do worry if they're going to cancel each other out at the Oscars. I thought Conclave was a huge frontrunner, but now I'm like, oh, will the Brutalists come in and take some of those awards? Because, I think, the Academy tends to divide movies up into camps. We'll give it to one of these, very classic style films, and we'll give it to an avant-garde film. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's very interesting. The acting is also superb. I couldn't believe while I was watching this movie that Adrien Brody would be able to get yet another amazing role in his career. Because back in 2003, he, of course, was the youngest person ever at that point, at 29, to win Best Actor for The Pianist. And he really hasn't worked very much since then. I mean, he's had some good supporting roles sprinkled across his career, and he's made some real stinkers. But he just kind of, for the most part, disappeared. And every once in a while, he'd show up in the back or of some ensemble cast, a lot of times for Wes Anderson, and you'd be like, oh yeah, he won an Oscar, whatever happened to him? So to see him come roaring back here, it's just really amazing to have like two iconic performances in a career. I mean, there are some actors who just go from iconic performance to iconic performance, you know, but I guess the bookending of it is what makes it so have almost a surreal quality to it. I think he's guaranteed his second nomination, and he also might even win. He might win. I think he has a very strong shot at winning, even though he's won before, because he's just so good here. Although after seeing A Complete Unknown, I think it might be Timmy C. We'll see. I think it's between, speaking of these three movies, although I love them, so maybe I'm a little biased, but I think it's between Ralph Fiennes, Adrien Brody, and Timothée Chalamet for Best Actor. And in my opinion, we'll see. But you know who never won an Oscar and who's never even been nominated? Mr. Guy Pearce. Oh, I think that's going to be corrected. I think he's definitely going to be nominated. And he also has, I think, a shot at winning. He has, of course, always been an amazing actor, but what he does with this role, he really sneaks up on you. I was very impressed with his performance here. At first, it just seems like a nothing role. You're like, why would Guy Pearce want this role? Why would you give Guy Pearce this role? You know, isn't he just too much of an actor for this role? But then you're like, no, he's perfect. Felicity, the nuance and the little hints that he drops early on that you're like, did I imagine that? And then you're like, I did not imagine that, is amazing. All right, so Felicity Jones shows up pretty late in the film. You're like, oh yeah, she's in this movie. But she also does a great job in a surprisingly nuanced and complex role, although it's smaller. It's not as fully realized as Adrien Brody and Guy Pearce's. And I believe that's intentional. I don't know how good that is, though. But I think the reason they made that choice is that she's very much a woman seen through the eyes of the men around her. You get hints that she's like this amazing woman. Like, she's just like, wow, like she's just so competent and she has just this fire in her and she's so capable and has achieved so much. But it barely registers, not only because of society, but because World War II. You know, these things rob her of her true potential and derail her. Oh, speaking of derailing. Oh, wait till you see one of the sequences in the film. All right. But I think that's one of the reasons that's one of the things that makes her, I think that's why that scene is in the film, by the way, now that I think about it. All right. So anyway, I think that's what makes her performance so incredible, though, and that she's still able to convey what an amazing woman this is with very little room in the film to do so. Also, she has one scene that is the stuff of Oscar nominations and potentially wins. You're like, there's your Oscar scene. I mean, it was like, wow. What a scene. I'd also like to point out that while this film takes place at the end of World War II and stretches out over many years, I think ends around the 70s, it reflects a lot of what's happening today. And that gives an added layer of, I think, interest and importance to the film. You're like, whoa, we are doomed to repeat the mistakes we do not recognize. And also the cyclical nature of history and life. By the way, I have to say, there's this one large room in the massive building that Laszlo constructs. And, at first, by the way, I thought the building was hideous. I was like, I'm with the town. That's ugly. But the more I looked at it, the more I was like, it's kind of beautiful, actually. I like it. I think this is going to be a real boon to the town. I really liked it, actually, which I think is, part of the whole point. And I guess maybe there's something to be said there about embracing who we are and what we've went through in our emotions. There's so much. I'm still unpacking this thing. But there's one giant room in the building that I think is flooded. At first, I thought they had a mishap, and I'm like, oh, you better drain that room. But then it seemed like they were never going to drain it. I was like, wait a minute, is that room supposed to be flooded? Are you asking people to walk through a flooded room? Isn't that kind of like somewhat unhygienic and dangerous? I wasn't sure what they were trying to say there. I'm still thinking about that. I'll be curious to hear your theories on that. I was like, what? So Toths' huge building, and a marble quarry, where they farm marble. I've never seen one of those before in Italy. Were some of the best set pieces throughout the film. Really have a huge impact. And also this one architecture, like this one build site, that was very cool too. But these other ones were amazing. So I'm blown away by this film. I really enjoyed it. And I think it's important that you see it in theaters and get to experience that cool intermission. I mean, it's just a really unique and interesting experience. Also, it has a few shocking surprises, just like Conclave and other things, right? I'd feel bad if anyone ruined for you. So that's another reason to see this movie in theaters sooner rather than later. So that's my review of The Brutalist. Now, do you want to see it? If you do want to see it, it's going to be in limited release starting December 20th to qualify for award season, and it'll probably slowly roll out from there. So I hope when it does come to a theater near you, you check it out. It'll, of course, eventually go to digital, and because it's an A24 film, Warner Brothers has that deal with them that all the films then go to Max. So it'll eventually end up on Max where it's actually perfect. So again, I think it's going to be a huge Oscar frontrunner. I think it's probably going to win at least one award, deservedly so. And I think it's definitely worth your time. I think it's an incredible piece of filmmaking. All right, so again, that's my review. Share your own thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.